Hey everyone! Today we're going to trace the incredible evolution of one of history's most influential moral laws. It's a story about an idea that started as a rule about property and ended up as a principle about the human heart.
So let me ask you something right off the bat. When you hear the word adultery, you probably have a pretty clear idea of what it means. But what did one of the oldest laws on the subject actually mean when it was first written down? Well, the answer, it's probably not what you think.
To get to the bottom of this, we've got to go way, way back to the Old Testament. This is the foundation where the whole story begins.
And there it is. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Simple, direct, and of course, incredibly famous. 6 words that have echoed through thousands of years. But to really understand their original power, we have to look past the words and dive into the world they were first spoken into.
Okay, and this is where it gets really crucial. Back in ancient Israelite society, the term adultery was super specific. It only applied to a sexual act involving a married woman and a man who was not her husband. Get this, it was fundamentally seen as a violation of the husband's rights, almost like a theft of his property that also threatened his entire family bloodline.
See, this was so much more than just a private moral failing. Oh no, it was a direct assault on the social fabric. Think about it. It could introduce a child into the family that wasn't the husband's, throwing inheritance and lineage into total chaos. That's why it was considered such a massive sin, not just against a person, but against the whole community and God himself. And the consequences, they were severe, sometimes even death.
All right, so we've got the law. But to really see just how high the stakes were, let's look at one of the most dramatic and cautionary tales in the entire Bible. This story is a perfect illustration of the law in action. It all kicks off with King David's lustful gaze. Just one look. And that single look sets off this insane chain reaction. First, the adulterous act with Bathsheba, who was married to one of his loyal soldiers. Then, to cover it all up, he arranges a deceptive murder. But when the prophet Nathan calls him out, the consequences are absolutely devastating, bringing tragedy to his family for generations. The moral here was crystal clear. This divine law was absolute. It didn't matter if you were a peasant or the king sitting on the throne. The sin was the sin, and there was just no escaping the fallout.
So for centuries, that was pretty much the deal. Adultery was a physical act with huge societal consequences. But then, fast forward hundreds of years, and the whole idea gets revisited and completely turned on its head. And this is the pivot point. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus takes this ancient law and flips it completely inward. He says that the sin isn't just in the physical act itself, but that it begins with the intention, with the lustful thought. And just like that, the moral focus snaps from the body to the heart. Okay, so that was a massive shift. Let's really break down the legacy of that change. Let's put the two views side by side and see how this whole concept truly evolved. Okay, check this out. On one side, you've got the Old Testament view. It's a physical act, a public crime against property and family lines. But then you look at the New Testament view. Suddenly, it's about an internal intention, a private violation of your own personal purity. It's a sin of the heart. The location of the crime literally moves from the town square right into your own mind. And that right there is the profound transformation. A law that once policed a community's social order became a principle that asks each of us to police our own thoughts. The definition of faithfulness just expanded way beyond physical fidelity to include our inner, mental, and emotional worlds too. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. This 3,000-year journey, from a rule about an external act to a principle about an internal thought, is one of the most significant shifts in moral history. So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does this ancient evolution continue to shape our modern ideas of what it really means to be faithful today?